Welcome everyone to Zoom into Books this evening. We are celebrating the first anniversary of Zoom into Books. We had our first live broadcast on April 1st, 2020. So we've tried to reinvent the wheel here and change our business model. So we're celebrating. And tonight we have three amazing award-winning authors with us. We've got Rick Robinson, Don Helin, and Eliot Parker. So we're going to get started here. On April 1st, 2020. I'm going to ask all three of you a first question. And I'd like for you to tell our viewers what the inspiration for your book series is. Each of them write thrillers and mysteries, and they all have several books in a series. So Rick, let's start with you.
Well, you know, Kathy, I'm going to actually violate today the Kurt Vonnegut rule. And Kurt Vonnegut said, unless you're Snoopy, never start a book with the weather forecast. But it was a cold and windy opening day just like this one. I'm wearing my Cincinnati Reds gear today because it's opening day here in Greater Cincinnati. I live in Northern Kentucky. And it was a day just like this because today the temperature at the Reds game was about 35 at opening pitch and nearly got snowed out because we were having snow showers up here. I went to an opening day game like that more than a dozen years ago it was. And I took a client that I had to the ball game. His name was Tom Salinger. And we decided real quickly that we did not want to stay in the cold weather and watch the game. Now, I had been working on a book since I was 17 years old. I had met the great Jesse Stewart, and I decided that I wanted to write the great coming of age novel, despite the fact that I was at that point in my 40s and had never come of age. We get to the bar where we're going to now watch the game because we've left the ball game. It's too cold. It's just like it was today. Snowy, wet, cold. We get to the bar and I tell him this story that I've just told everyone listening. And as I were sitting there, he looked at me and he said, why would you want to write a coming of age novel? You've got 30 years in politics. Why don't you tell all those stories that you're always telling us at the office and everybody's laughing about, and you tell all these great stories? Why don't you weave those into a thriller or a mystery and, you know, put that together as a book? And so that became, I went home that night and started writing my first book called The Maximum Contribution, about a guy from my hometown running for United States Congress that gets himself in the middle of a bad situation. And that book is filled with a lot of stories for the road that were very similar to the stories that I had spent 30 years in politics doing. I always like to say that when you read one of my books, you'll understand what it's like to be on the campaign bus. You know, when you go out and you're hitting the road for 5, 6, 7 days in a row, staying in hotels, getting on and off the bus, going this stop, that stop. Those are the type of things that are happening in the book all the while that the thriller is going on. So that really became the inspiration for that first book. It became the inspiration for the characters that were then added onto it. The characters ended up being the characters that I had lived with in my life in politics. People ask me who the candidate is. Well, the candidate were the people that I worked for, people I had worked for over the years, people like Bob Dole, Jim Bunning, who was one of my mentors. People ask me who the campaign managers were. Well, they were some of the campaigns that I ran myself, and they were some of the great campaign managers that I worked with, like Lee Atwater, and running Jim Bunning's campaign. So when you look at the context of where that all came from, it all came from a cold and stormy day. Forgive me, Kurt Vonnegut, for I have sinned. Mea culpa, mea culpa. I begin this story and I end this story with a weather forecast. It was a cold and stormy opening day in Cincinnati, just like it was today.
Um, your books move quickly, and Rick really does write from behind the scenes, as all three of these gentlemen do. Don, Helin, let's hear your inspiration.
Well, right after I knew I wanted to write thrillers. And so I joined International Thriller Writers. And they have a wonderful program called their debut author program. And we had 17 other writers in our program. It's kind of like a little pledge class. And, you know, we've stayed friends over all these years, and some of them have done very, very well. We were fortunate because each month a different member of ITW would come on and do a work to help us learn some specific issue. And then we could ask questions, and our manager, our board manager for the whole program was Lee. And Lee, as you know, Lee Childs has a wonderful series character in Jack Reacher. And I asked Lee about, because at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew, you know, I spent a career in the Army, actually spent 3 tours, almost 10 years in the Pentagon. So I had managed to pick up an awful lot of wonderful stories and a lot of wonderful information. So I knew I wanted a military somebody. But then I began to think, after what Lee had said, maybe I should develop a series character. And of course, what he does is his hero just moves from place to place, and all he's got is a toothbrush. He said so many writers end up having to spend the first third of their book trying to develop the scenario and all this, but for him, his guy just gets on a bus and goes someplace, and things start to happen. And so I began to think about that, and I tried as hard as I could to develop my character, Zach Kelly, who probably has a little bit of me in him, although he certainly is a better athlete. He's probably better looking, but that's kind of where it came from. And also, when you have a series character, you don't have to spend the first 4 chapters trying to explain where they were from and how they were going and all that sort of stuff. So I think I have to give a tip of the hat to Lee Childs for giving me that idea. And for me, it's been successful. And I actually have, Zach has a small group that he works with. And after you start working with these characters, you begin to really like them. And I think it would be hard for me to let them go.
Thank you, Don. Eliot, would you like to share your inspiration?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Kathy, for having me. And I'm honored to be on with Don and Rick, who are just fantastic writers and great people. And I will say one thing, it is opening day, Rick, that I've got my Chicago Cubs t-shirt on today. I've been a Cubs fan, so I got my Cubs gear on. And
well, hey, Eliot, you know, one of the follow-up books that we did was called Killing the Curse, that I wrote with Dennis Hetzel, where we predicted the Cubs winning the series before the Cubs actually did it. So we were writing true fiction at that time. We were writing the Cubs actually winning the World Series.
That's right. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that they won. But yeah, you know, my inspiration, I would say first thing I would say is I would echo what Don said. If you are a mystery thriller writer, or you're thinking about writing a mystery thriller writer book, check out the International Thriller Writers, ITW. It's open to anybody, no matter what your experience level is, and it's free. It's a free membership, and it's lifetime membership. You don't have to pay dues or anything, but there's a lot of good tips there. But you know, one of the things I've learned being a mystery thriller writer is how smart mystery thriller readers are and how good they are at close reading. And so writing mysteries and thrillers is really challenging because you have to do it well, because your readers are very smart and they're going to know if you are taking them down a path that is not going to work or doesn't make sense. So when I decided, and mysteries and thrillers have always been my favorite genre to read. The very first series of books I ever remember reading as a kid was the Encyclopedia Brown mystery series, which some of you may be familiar with. And the author who wrote that series of books just died about 4 or 5 years ago. But basically, Encyclopedia Brown was kind of the neighborhood sleuth. If you wanted him to solve a case, find your cat, your lost bicycle, your homework that blew away, you went up to him, you put a little quarter in his coffee cup, and he solved the mystery. So that was my favorite series growing up, and I've been a mystery thriller fan ever since then. But when I set out to write the character Ronan McCullough, and who's the character in my 2 books, Fragile Brilliance and The Knife's Edge, I wanted to do something that David Baldacci suggested in some things I've attended, presentations I've heard him speak at. And he says, anytime I'm writing a new character, anytime I'm writing a book in a series with the same set of characters, I always ask myself, how can I do it differently than either what I've done before or what's out there currently right now in terms of what other mystery and thriller authors are doing. And so I'd gotten interested in a story I had read. I don't remember where I read this, online or in a newspaper several years ago. It was about a police officer in Atlanta who, on his last 5 years on the job, his partner had retired and he had 5 more years to go. And he was partnered with a guy who had transferred over from soft crimes or crimes like money laundering into sort of the harder crime, the murders and the theft and armed robbery and that kind of thing. Well, their relationship was interesting, and what ended up happening, nobody knew until the older partner retired, that the older partner was gay. And it was a huge secret, and it opened up all kinds of issues and issues within the department, outside the department, people that said they knew that he was gay and kept it quiet because they wanted to protect him and not have him sort of the subject of being made fun of or treated differently. Some people were totally shocked. But it was just an interesting addendum to this guy's retirement story that I was reading. And I thought, wow, there's not a whole lot of stories where the lead police detective or the lead character is gay. And there are very few of them set right in the heart of Appalachia, which is where my books take place, right in Charleston, where I'm from, Charleston, West Virginia. So that was kind of really, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to create a character that wasn't out there, that someone hadn't done before. And even though he's got some of the same characteristics you would expect in all police detectives or investigators, he's different in a lot of ways. So that was really my inspiration to kind of create him. In terms of the plots for the 2 books, I got really interested in looking at kind of real world issues. And just as an example, for A Knife's Edge, which is the 2nd book in the series right here, I sort of ripped the plot for this book from the headlines. And where it came from was, there was a story a couple of years ago, some of you might remember this, about a woman named Elizabeth Holmes. And she was actually one of Time's People of the Year, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And I was at a bookstore and I was looking at the magazine rack and I saw her picture. Here's the Times Person of the Year. Long story short, Elizabeth Holmes had created supposedly this technology that was going to be able to diagnose all kinds of health issues for an individual with just 1 drop of blood. So she had created this technology to where you could go to a CVS pharmacy, you could go to your family physician, have a drop of blood and find out not just your blood pressure and triglycerides, but if there were cancer cells present, if you had markers in your blood for other kinds of illnesses and disease. So she created all of this, gotten all these investors, built this huge complex in Silicon Valley that was going to make these machines that doctors and hospitals were going to be able to use. It was going to revolutionize the way blood testing was done, both for hospitals and doctors' offices, but also law enforcement, because you could take 1 drop of blood from someone's finger and determine all these different things. Well, long story short, she ended up becoming a fraud. All of that technology was a fraud. She had built all of these people out of tens of millions of dollars, and she's on trial right now, or getting ready to go on trial for all that. But that got me thinking, what would happen if that technology really did work? And what would happen if that technology fell into the wrong hands? What if there was a company that could do this and decided to, instead of using it for good purposes, used it for criminal purposes? Being able to doctor blood samples, for example, at a crime scene. Being able to doctor drug tests that hospitals do when they're trying to find out, the blood alcohol level, or if anyone's been on drugs at the hospital. What if a nefarious cartel or a group of individuals had perfected this technology and used it for odd purposes? And that was really the impetus for A Knife's Edge. And one of the things that was really challenging for me in writing this is I had to do a lot of research. I had to do a lot of research about how blood analysis works, what happens when your blood is taken, where does it go in the hospital. I had a chance to interview a couple of hematologists that worked at King's Daughters Medical Center in Ashland, Kentucky, and they were wonderful to give me insight. They took me down to the lab, they let me look around, and let me watch kind of some of the processes. So it was challenging in that regard. And I'm not a math and science person, obviously. I'm a writer, so I try to steer away from those kinds of things, lots of numbers and in terms of science. But so it was a growing experience for me as well. But that was my inspiration. I wanted to create a character that hadn't been done before, that hadn't been put in a place that a lot of other police detectives and those kinds of characters had been put in. But I also wanted to connect it to, sort of real world plots, to where you could read the story and think, this could happen. I could see this happening in my community or my state or my region of the country. And so that's really where the ideas for A Knife's Edge came from.
Eliot, that's very interesting, because in my books, when you read the political thrillers that I end up writing, there's always something real that backs it up. The Manifest Destiny has to do with the first invasion of the Capitol, not the one that we had in January, but the 1812, in the War of 1812. Somebody stole the mace with the British Navy. Somebody stole the mace when they invaded Washington. Writ of Mandamus has to do with the F-16s that we sold to Iran. Somewhere, the latest book that I wrote, Opposition Research, had to do with, in large part, Whitey Bulger. So you have all these different things that are going back and forth, but I always try and throw in on the political side. It's interesting you say you saw from Time, because I always, when people read my books, they always pick up on the fact that is something real that backs up what has just happened, what is going on in the book itself.
Well, that's one of the advantages of my time in the Pentagon. My third book is somebody tries to steal a Predator drone and going to use it to attack the President of the United States on the 4th of July when he's giving a speech. And so you have to have enough realism. I know I heard time and time again at international thriller writers that the devil's in the details, and your details have to be accurate. If your setting and your details are accurate, people will go with you on your plot, and that's worked out for me pretty well.
Don, when I was at the ITW the one time when you met my son Joshua, my oldest son, yeah. I remember we went to one of the panels, and one of the authors actually did a reading from his book and said the man ran from the cabinet or from the Roosevelt room up the stairs to the Oval Office. And my son looked at me and said, "Dad, isn't the Roosevelt room right next to the Oval Office?" And even at that point, he was in college at the time. But even he picked up on the fact that, oh yeah, you don't have to run from the Roosevelt room to the Oval Office. You can actually shout. The doors are right next to it, across from each other. I'm sorry, Kathy. When did you lose control?
You guys are good at doing your thing. I have put together some photographs of your all's author appearances and events. So Belinda's got the screen up there, and let's see. Yeah, Belinda, this first one is that the first one? This is Eliot. I was thinking this was at the end, but that's okay. Eliot, would you like to speak to these photographs?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'd love to. That picture on the far left is me presenting at the West Virginia Writers Conference in Cedar Lakes, West Virginia. And I don't exactly remember what the title of that workshop was, but I was talking about Jaws, the book by Peter Benchley, which I could go on a nice lecture about that book, but I use that book a lot when I'm teaching creative writing, and I use that book a lot when I'm teaching composition writing to students, because there's a lot of good things about Benchley's book, but it's a deeply flawed book as well in terms of writing and craft and storytelling. And there's a lot of things he does poorly in there, and which is one of the reasons that Steven Spielberg's movie Jaws is very, very not like the book. If you watch the movie and you read the book, it's almost like you're reading two totally different stories. And after I read the book, I understood why Spielberg made the changes that he did. But so that was what that first picture was.
Did somebody walk behind you, Eliot, the whole time going, I mean, was that Helin? Was that Helin's job? Was he supposed to just walk behind you and do that?
Nobody did, amazingly enough. But I also like to talk about Jaws because everybody has seen that movie, even 18-year-olds right out of high school. It's a cult classic. Everybody's seen Jaws, or they know enough of the story, so it's a good frame of reference. That second picture, I think, Kathy, is when we were at a holiday show at Milton. I don't know if it was at the Pumpkin Park or it was at somewhere out there.
It was the Lions Club show.
That's right. That's
the
right.
First week of December, and we had 40 feet, and we had 20 authors, and it was an amazing 2 days for us. And the Lions Club raises a lot of money for the communities there.
Yeah, and we had a great time that day. That third picture was at the West Virginia Book Festival. I think it was 2 years ago, I guess now, because there wasn't one last year because of COVID, and there I was sitting at the end of the table talking to someone. And then that fourth picture is from 2018 when the State Journal newspaper in West Virginia recognized me as one of Generation Next's 40 under 40 people. 40 people under the age of 40 who are making a difference in West Virginia through the work they do, the professional work, the creative work, their involvement in the community, their outreach, their connections, and what they do to help make West Virginia a better place. So that was really a great honor, and it was a great day to spend, a great evening to spend with some really talented people throughout our state. I think West Virginia, we sometimes get a bad rap, and we don't realize that we've got a lot of diamonds in our rough, and that we do have younger people in our state that are making a difference. And so it was great to share that evening with them and to get to meet them. So yeah. So
Don and I are in geezers over 50, so we're both we have a similar organization.
Well, congratulations! That's wonderful, Eliot.
Thanks, Don.
Congratulations on that. Let's go to the next slide, Belinda. All right, Rick Robinson. Share your story. You're muted, Rick.
So the first time that I think that Kathy ever submitted for a book was on my first novel, which was The Maximum Contribution, as you see there in the book. And it was a runner-up in the Hollywood Book Festival. And that picture is with a young woman who I became acquainted with through a celebrity auction named Robin Curie, who had been a Playboy centerfold in the past, and became acquainted with my books, actually commented on several of my books, and we had a hook that day, Kathy. I don't know that I ever told you this. We had a hook that day that if you came and bought a Rick Robinson novel, or if you bought one of the headline book novels, and I can't remember the gentleman who wrote the book, Duke of Dubai, Kathy, his name is
John Dragonetti.
Yeah, if you bought one of the headline books, you also got a personally autographed centerfold picture from Robin.
Okay, I didn't know about that hook. That's a good one.
we were really popular that day. I mean, I don't know. I would like to think that they really loved my books, but Robin was.
I'm sure that's what they wanted, Rick.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was all about the writing, but Robin was very kind that day to come out to the book festival and do that. I still keep in touch with Robin. She's just a delightful person, and has been a fan of my books ever since. And the one on the right, I guess, Kathy, the one on the right, that's when we were at a West Virginia Book Festival.
Yes, indeed. That's
You know,
exactly right.
my favorite book festival story doesn't involve any of the pictures here, though. It's the one that I nearly got us thrown out of.
Very near.
And that was Kathy and I got invited to speak at a writers conference in Pennsylvania. I can't remember the name of the university. Very prestigious writing conference. Kathy and I were on a panel. Where was that?
It was Penn Writers. Don.
No, it wasn't Penn Writers. It was the one at the college.
It's Seton Hill.
Seton Hill.
Yes, that's right. That was
So
Denver.
we are there at Seton
Penn
Hill.
Writers.
We are at Seton Hill, and a woman in the audience raises her hand, and Kathy and I are on one end for the independent writers, and then there's an agent, and then there's a Simon type publisher, and I can't remember, somebody from one of the big six. And somebody raised their hand and said, ask the agent, do you ever ask a potential author what the last book they read? And the agent looked around and said, yes, I do. And if they say Harry Potter, I immediately dismiss them.
That's right.
To which I leaned forward in my microphone and I said, oh, you've had an author that published more books than the Bible last year?
That's right.
And went on a rant about how my children dress up like characters, stand in line at 12 o'clock midnight, waiting to get the first book, go home and read it, and ask if they can not go to school the next day so they can finish the book. It may not be the best story. It may not be the best. I don't give it. If I got a kid that interested in writing, tell me when you have a book that has that kind of impact. Come back here and say something stupid like this to that audience. Of course, I have to say I probably went overboard, Kathy. That was the one time that afterwards we're walking out and I'm saying, I looked at Kathy and I said, we're not going to get invited back, are we? And she went, no, we'll never be invited back.
And we never were.
We never were. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. But
Let's go to the next slide, Blaine.
but it was true. But it was true. Tournament. So this is even more fun. We two pictures here that are great fun. First off, we had a West Virginia Library Association meeting,
Right.
at the Greenbrier. And we decided after it was over that you and me and your sister Patty were going to have the first annual, and they never held it there again. So we never went back. But we had a bowling tournament, which I believe you won.
I'm sure it was me. Yeah. I'm sure.
I think you won. I think you won our
No
bowling
idea.
tournament. Then the American Library Association and the relationship that I've had with there's R.G. Griffith, who's a great writer. I love his stuff. But my friend Landau Eugene Murphy Jr., who had won America's Got Talent, which is one of my favorite stories of telling, because Kathy, absolutely, I did not want to write that book. I had no desire to write somebody's biography. It was something that I didn't think was something I wanted to do. And Kathy said, come and meet the guy and just spend a day with him. And you're so much into music. I bet if you meet the guy, you're going to like him. You're going to want a story, write the story. We met, related in truthfully within seconds of meeting each other. We followed them to an event. I got out of the car. I had on red Chuck Taylors and he had on red Air Jordans. And we immediately began dissing each other about our tennis shoes.
That's right.
We formed an immediate friendship. We still, whenever he's online, when I get a chance to see him, we whenever he's around, I go and see one of his concerts. But what a truly great guy, and one of the true wonderful experiences that I've had is writing the biography of the guy who won America's Got Talent. Landau Landau Murphy. What a great human being.
Now that's a wonderful book.
And what a great story. I mean, here's
Yep.
That's right.
that's a story, Don, that if you made it up and put it into fiction, they call about, when you talk to an agent, you talk to a publisher, and they say, well, we can't suspend our disbelief of that one. You would write his story and somebody go, no, I'm not buying it. It's that unique, it's that different, it's that uplifting. And for everybody who's seen Landau, from everybody who's watched him on TV, I'm going to tell you something right now. This is the thing I tell everybody that asks me about what I get a lot of people that walk up to me and go, what's he like? And I tell everybody exactly what you see on TV, exactly what you read in the book. That's Landau. He's one of the most genuine, authentic people I have ever met in my life. Don, the first night we met, just to give you an idea of his sense of humor, first night we met, he wanted me to put on a wig of dreadlocks, walk onto the stage somewhere in West Virginia. I forget where we were. We were at somewhere in West Virginia.
Ripley, West Virginia.
Yeah. Wanted me to walk on stage with dreadlocks on, and him pantomiming me in the background singing "That's Life." And see,
that's a picture.
You got to do that. You got to do that. It'll be funny. We'll see if the audience does it. I'm going, man. I don't think they're going to think that's all that funny.
It's true. Landau has remained humble and grateful, and he's always so much fun to have in the booth. Belinda, let's go to the next slide.
Oh my! I recognize I recognize so many of these people. Let's see. Oh, that in the bottom left is my friend Carla Trout. She is the head librarian for the Lancaster Library Association. And she was at I think it was the National Library Association conference. And wasn't that the one that was in Washington?
I think that one was in New Orleans.
No, that's, yeah. And so we had a chance to get together, and she's helped me a lot on getting opportunities to do signings and things like that. Now, the one up above, was that the National Library Association? I'm trying to remember now.
No, that's the first Southern Christmas show that we did.
Yes. Yes. and
yeah.
I can't believe all the opportunities. If I remember right, I was down there on Veterans Day, and oh, what a wonderful opportunity. There's over 100,000 people that attend that conference, and you just are busy all the time. And the middle picture, I am together with one of my most friendly, favorite people in the whole world, Ashley, and I think we're doing a Indie Award twosome.
Yeah, that was for the Indie Book Awards.
Yeah, and but that must have been with all the Christmas tree there. Maybe that was the Southern Christmas show again.
It is.
And on the right is my good friend, and his name gets away from me for a minute.
That's Grant Malloy Smith.
It sure is, and he has. I know he has written some wonderful books, and this guy is a talent. He is a wonderful guitar player. He's a singer, and he's done a number of recordings. And he has a book and a song on Fly Possum Fly, and it's a story of this little possum, and who actually, if I remember right, plays the flute. And my granddaughter plays the flute, and not only is it a book, but it's also a song. And if you ever have a chance to go to Grant's website, he's got a number of those songs up there. And this guy is a real talent, and I know we're going to see him a lot in the future. Boy, those bring back some wonderful memories.
Yeah, I got to interview him when we were doing the online stuff during the American Library Association.
Right.
And you're right, Don. What a, you know, it's he was looking at me going, well, maybe you ought to bring your mandolin down tomorrow and play. And I'm going, man, I've listened to you play. I'm not going to sit next to you, and I'm not going to sit next to you and try and keep up.
Oh, he is a real talent, and he is the easiest guy to talk to and the friendliest guy. And I think we'll hear a lot from him in the future.
Belinda, let's move on. Hopefully there we go. This is an interesting photo. Rick, do you remember where the one on the left is?
Well, the one on the left is a signing for two of my dearest friends, Kevin Kelly, who has done several of my book covers on the left, along with Geraldine Morris, who's one of my closest friends, and that is at the now closed Borders. We've entered an age of some really interesting times for independent, well, not for all writers, I should suspect, and that the book and mortar shops are going away. Borders became Joseph Beth here in my area, which is now becoming Trader Joe's. But the fun one was with at the time, my law partner on the right is with Kevin Murphy. When Kevin won, I think that might have been the year that Landau's book won an award that I have on my shoulder for the Next Generation Book Awards. But Kevin Murphy, whose birthday it is today, happy birthday, Kevin.
Oh, happy birthday, Kevin.
And Murph wrote a wonderful book about surviving cancer after surviving cancer. And that is about how after you survive cancer, sometimes the relationships fall prey to the disease as much as the body does. And it's a beautiful book. It's a wonderful book. If you're a couple that is right now going through a battle with cancer, I suggest you buy Kevin's book. It's a wonderful story. And that was the night we ended up at, what was the name of that? As we would say in Kentucky, that great Italian restaurant, Carmine's or something of that nature.
Carmine's.
That became a tradition. When we would go to the Next Generation Book Awards, we would end up at Carmine's for some, as we would say in Kentucky, some Italian food.
And this award reception, that's Don Helin on the right. That's
he's blocked out by my squares. I don't see Don. Don, I can't see you.
Yeah, he's on the right.
Zoom is blocking me.
And
yeah, I've got the pictures are on the right here, so it's hard to see the total picture there over on the right. But
I made sure that we did that purposely because I wanted to make sure that I got all the glory in this and you didn't, Don. I want to make sure that was kind of the way it lined up. So it really worked out well for me.
Yeah.
this is, I think we got these awards at the Harvard Club, I do believe.
Harvard Club in New York City.
Manhattan.
You know, that kind of reminds me, it's kind of funny because Don and I actually were friends before Kathy met Don.
Right.
We had met at one of the International Thriller Writer events, or I think it was Don, and
absolutely.
and
we were on a panel together at ITW, and then next year I came to Penn Writers, and you brought Kathy to Penn Writers. And I remember, I will never forget this. I walked up to Kathy and we talked for a minute, and I said, "Do you like military thrillers?" And Kathy said, "Well, I've never done one." And I thought, crap. And then I turned around and Kathy said, "Why don't you just send it to me?" And that became Devil's Den. And as they say, the rest is history. And Rick, I owe you a lot on that. And we've had so much fun over the years.
Well, you don't owe me a lot, but if you want to buy a Guinness for me next time we're together, I won't refuse.
We can do that. That's what I call a lot. A Guinness is good stuff.
The one thing you'll find out about Kathy, if you're a prospective writer and you send her something, you know, she's somebody who, you know, the writing counts. You don't mess around on this stuff. I mean, she you know, people like Don who walked up to her and said, "Let me send you her book." Make sure your first 50 pages are good, because if she can't get past the first 5, she's not going to keep looking any longer. She's getting so many requests now these days for publication. But Don was one of those ones where, you know, you say thank you, but Don, the writing stood on its own of that book. That was a wonderful book.
Yeah.
It was. And now we're looking at
I
Don
see a
Helin.
guy I know on the left there. I'm out of panel, and I'm not sure. I've been like that on so many panels. I need a little more to get that one.
I think that's the one that I came up for, and you and I sat on that panel
That's right.
together.
When you came up to Penn Writers, I think that's right.
Yeah.
No, that you came up and met
That was mystery.
my friend who runs the bookstore there.
Yes.
So, absolutely, absolutely. And that next one over, Marketplace.
That's Dick Hatton and you at the West Virginia Book Festival.
That's you and Dick. Now the one up in the right is Coleman and Blunt. So if you're anybody that is Don and I's age, Eliot, you can act like you know who they are, but you have to have a little bit of gray hair going on to know who these guys are. These guys were some of the great singers of the Motown era. Now they were with Platters, they were with some of the other groups, but this particular picture I find interesting. I'm standing there talking to Landau, and we're playing around, and Landau and I always seem to get into trouble when we're at events. Kathy tries to separate us. In fact, she won't let us sit together because we end up not selling books, and we ended up causing mischief. But I remember this situation. And I guess it was a Platter song, but I remember some woman walking up, real young girl, and saying, "Well, would my mother know who you are?"
Gee.
And he looks over and he goes, "Only you can make this change in me." And he sings the song to her, and I'm thinking, I'm starting to tear up, because here is the man singing this song to this young girl, and she goes, "Well, was that like popular when my mom was young?"
He is so easy.
He just goes, "Give me the book and I'll sign it."
He is so easy to talk to. I remember when I first met him, I knew who he was and I knew how famous he was. And I went up and introduced myself, and he was just so down to earth. He's just a guy,
He's so kind and so nice.
Fun to be around. He's funny. And I have really thoroughly enjoyed getting to know him over time. When I
was living in DC, Leonard Coleman and Blunt invited me to one of their concerts in downtown DC. And I took my buddy, you saw the picture of Geraldine Morris, her husband, and I went to their concert. And when it was absolutely one of the most remarkable evenings, just seeing these guys. And the funny thing was, they had the silk shirt, they had the silk suits on, they had everything else. They still had all the moves. But we noticed one thing. What? Everything was above the board. Everything was above the waist. They weren't quite kicking the legs like they used to. I said, I forget it was Joe or one of them. I went afterwards after him, and he goes, "Hey man, we might throw a hip. We can still work the arms, but when you're down there moving the legs around, we don't do that anymore."
Well, they're such gentlemen and so talented. And this next series of pictures, Eliot.
Okay.
Eliot had an Amazon #1 bestseller for a couple days.
Congratulations. Well, that's wonderful.
Yes. I guess I'll go. That picture on the upper left, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm talking to someone.
I think it's at Barnes and Noble or Borders.
Yeah, I'm either talking to someone or making a good point or asking somebody how they want their name spelled. I'm not exactly sure, but you can see all all of the books that I've published there. I talked about Fragile Brilliance and A Knife's Edge earlier on the inspiration questions. So those are those books. Code for Murder, which is another series, and I know we'll get to future projects. That book will be coming out in October from Headline Books, the sequel to that book called A Final Call. But that was me doing something spellbinding and interesting in that picture. The one in the middle, this was a couple of years ago. I was recognized by the city of Huntington for outstanding community involvement. I got an outstanding community involvement award, and so that's the mayor to the right, Steve Williams, and those three people to the left were on the city council at the time. So I had a chance to be recognized at a city council meeting, which was really an honor. You know, you don't volunteer and do things in your community to be recognized, but at the same time, it's always nice when someone does notice the work that you do. And so that was a great opportunity. The picture on the right there, for 5 years, I hosted a television program on Armstrong Television called Chapters, where we interviewed, or I interviewed authors from West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. It was something that I'd started in partnership with Armstrong to bring attention to the great writers that we have in those three states who oftentimes get overlooked, particularly writers in Eastern Kentucky, Southern Ohio, and West Virginia, because Appalachia tends to get overlooked for all the wrong reasons and doesn't get enough attention paid for the right reasons. And the person I'm interviewing there was Lee Martin, who teaches creative writing at Ohio State, but he's been a Pulitzer Prize finalist in fiction for a book that he wrote back in 2006 or 7, and the title escapes me at the moment. But he had a new book out, and I had a chance to interview him on Chapters, and that's us either before the interview or after the interview discussing some things. On the far left there with the green lettering, I was asked September of, I guess, 2018. A lot of these are 2018 photos. To help celebrate Banned Books Week at Marshall University, and we had a chance. I had a chance to speak and read with the amazingly talented and wonderful Marie Manila, and we had a chance to talk a little bit about our thoughts on banned books, why banned books exist, and why we make a mistake by censoring books that have been dubbed sensitive or unacceptable by some bureaucratic board of school elected officials or something, or whoever determines that. We also got a chance to read from our work. So it was really great to get to talk to Marie. We were on a panel and talked a little bit about our thoughts about banned books. Then, as Kathy mentioned, in September of this past year, A Knife's Edge reached Amazon #1 bestseller status. So that was completely surprising and unexpected, and a real honor. So yeah, so that was really great. And boy, seeing all those pictures really take me back. And even though that was 3 years ago, it doesn't feel like 3 years ago. So.
Well, this last year has kind of just been a blur for
Yeah,
everybody, but that was one of the top things that happened for Knife's Edge. That was very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Belinda, let's go to the next one. This is our last slide. So Rick, I'll let you tell the story.
So this may be Kathy and I's favorite moment that we've done at any event. When we get to the booth, and this was after I had published, you can see on the hat there, Manifest Destiny. In the booth next to us.
This is in New York.
In New York at Book Expo America. In the booth next to us, Mary Travers had just passed away. And Paul Stuckey and Peter Yarrow had just released interesting as one of them is Jewish, they had just released a Christmas book. But it was a Christmas/Hanukkah book. And they were in the booth next to us, and we were able to sit and talk with them. I actually had my Mando with me at that particular event. We joked. I said, as someone who one time Mary Travers was very kind to give me an autograph for my wife, I say this with all due respect. Peter, Paul, and Ricky kind of sounds okay if you want me to play. And I said, I do know C, D, and G. And Peter looks at me and goes, do you know E minor? And I said, well, yeah. And he goes, well, you're in the band then. So, but what was beautiful about this, and somewhere if you search on my Facebook page, they ended up, end of the day, they get their signing. You see they're signing this CD that they had recorded of some of the last stuff they had done when Mary Travers was alive. And at the end of the day, there's hardly anybody left in the Jake Javits Arena, and these two guys strap on guitars and put on a concert. And they maybe did, what, Kathy, 10 songs? But it was one of those magical situations where, you're standing with the guys as they sing Puff the Magic Dragon, as they sing Leave It on a Jet Plane, as they sing the songs that were the songs of our youth. And I'm getting choked up, Kathy. This was such a great day to be, first off, exchanging comments back and forth. They would ask about my book. I would ask about, they'd ask about I know Ashley got involved in talking with them, and we all kind of interacted. But then when they just put on this little impromptu show, and
it was so neat because the last song they did was Puff the Magic Dragon, and there might have been 20 or 25 people around them at their booth, and everybody sang. We got to sing with them. It was really neat.
Oh, it was. I mean, it was one of those things. I told my daughter, it's funny you brought this picture, because my daughter and I were just watching the anniversary show of Peter, Paul, and Mary, and they talked about how the introduction to Puff at that, and they also talked about it there. This is the story of a much maligned dragon. It has nothing to do with drugs or anything else. It just happens to be about the end of childhood and the beginning of adulthood, and it's nothing more than that. It has no inner meaning. It has nothing than everything else. And anybody who has felt that whole feeling, we would like for you to sing along with us as we sing. And you're right, we got a private show.
It was it was so neat. It really was.
Yeah, it was truly. I had forgotten about it, as you bring that up. That may be one of my favorite days that in a dozen years of doing this with you, Kath. That sitting there with those two and listening to them sing all of their various songs, but finishing with Puff the Magic Dragon was it.
It was amazing, and that's one of the gifts of going to these events. We've met people from all around the world. We signed books in the author autographing area in New York City with movie stars. David Baldacci was there. I mean, the list is endless. This is such an exciting profession. And you three guys are so good at this. And it's so much fun when we can get together. And like we've been able to tell stories tonight. Before we leave, I'd like for each of you to tell briefly about the new book you have coming up.
Yeah, I see we're down to 4 minutes, so I'll make mine real easy. Now for something completely different. Rick Robinson and his brother-in-law Wade DeHate on the issue of beginning fly fishing. If you want to write about fiction, write fishing stories.
Another
all
thriller, fly fishing. Absolutely.
That's right.
We're
Fly
looking
fishing.
forward to it. Don?
I have gone totally a different route. We've been working so much on memoir that I decided to write my own memoir. And I've had 3 readers take a look at it, and they said, that's not bad. So at least I know my kids are going to love it, and we'll see where this goes.
I'm sure the publisher will love it too.
Well, he's pretty tough, Don.
We'll see.
Eliot?
I'm sticking more with the mystery thriller theme. The next book in my Stacey Tabbitt series. The first book was Code for Murder, and the sequel to that book, called A Final Call, will be out in October from Headline Books, and it picks up a few months after the end of what happens in Code for Murder. And as I said, I have a female homicide detective named Stacey Tabbitt in that book. In Code for Murder, she was wounded pretty badly in an undercover operation that went wrong at the beginning of Code for Murder, and so part of what she's dealing with in A Final Call is still the after effects of that. But she has a new case which is just as confounding and frustrating as the one that she was dealing with in Code for Murder. So it's been a lot of fun writing from a female perspective as a male writer. That has been fun. Not only are you writing about a homicide investigator, which has its own rewards and challenges, but writing from a female perspective has been a lot of fun too. So really excited to share that with everybody coming up in October.
Well, it's a great book, and Eliot will be with us at the West Virginia Book Festival the end of October in Charleston. We hope that happens. We have our fingers crossed for an in-person event. We're also looking forward to the Southern Christmas Show in Charlotte, North Carolina in November. So we do have a couple trivia questions for those of you who are listening and watching. And we do have very nice prizes. The first question is, name the 3 leading men in each of these authors' series. And you can send your answer to me, Kathy, at headlinebooks.com. The second question is, name the lake the alligators were released in the book Alligator Alley by Rick Robinson. So do your research, and you can read about these authors at zoomintobooks.com. You can go to our YouTube channel and meet these authors more in depth, in person, talking about their books. I hope everybody's had as much fun as we have. It's always fun to spend time with you 3 particularly. And thank you so much for giving up your evening tonight. And thank you, Belinda, for the good work on the slides. Great job.
Thanks,
peace, love, and read more books.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on
Take care,
Facebook.
everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Kathy.